Have you ever watched the grandeur of a royal procession? Gleaming carriages, stately horses, a crowd draped in Union Jacks, and wondered what stirs beneath all the pomp? Why does one monarch become an almost mythic figure while another struggles to captivate the people's hearts? Today we take a penetrating look at Prince Charles, heir apparent to the British throne, and examine why a significant segment of the British public wishes someone else, anyone else, would succeed Queen Elizabeth II instead. Far from a one-dimensional bad guy, Prince Charles emerges in layers, occasionally misunderstood, sometimes overshadowed, often burdened by complicated personal history, but still, here he is, firmly in line to become the next King of England, whether the British people are ready or not. In the next few thousand words, we'll delve into 20 distinct reasons that some members of the public resist the idea of Prince Charles ascending to the throne. But this isn't just a tale of popularity polls and tabloid rumors. It's a narrative about family rifts, historical baggage, personal quirks, and societal expectations. We'll explore the monarchy's traditions, look at episodes where Charles's behavior left the public uneasy, and understand the swirling, sometimes contradictory feelings around Britain's firstborn prince. By the time we reach the end, you'll see that the question, should Charles be king, is not a simple matter of a poll's yes or no. It's a collective reckoning with the monarchy's past, present, and what direction it might take in an age when monarchy itself feels like both a precious heirloom and an anachronism. So let's step into the swirling mix of royal intrigue and public opinion, starting with the first reason so often cited by those who challenge Charles's suitability for the crown. 1. Many people believe he's too sensitive for the job. When most of us imagine a king, we conjure up a commanding figure, someone who stands firm in the face of adversity, who leads armies or at least stands unflinchingly in front of them, who projects unwavering confidence. Now, place Prince Charles in that role. Many critics say he doesn't quite fit the mold. He is, by various accounts, sensitive and perhaps a bit too delicate for a position that demands unerring stoicism. Petronella Wyatt, a British journalist, once recounted how the late Queen Mother described Charles as spoiled and in constant need of cajoling and unconditional love. That portrayal might be endearing if he were just a kind-hearted aristocrat who hosts garden parties at Highgrove. But it hardly screams king material for those who believe the role requires resolute composure and nerves of steel. Those who knew Charles in his youth describe him as thoughtful, yes, but also easily bruised by criticism. And while sensitivity can be a virtue, many Brits recall the stern example set by Queen Elizabeth II, who lived through World War II, took the throne at a young age, and exuded a calm, unbreakable sense of duty for decades. Compared to his mother's near impenetrable fortitude, Charles's rumored fragility has led some to worry about how he might handle crises that inevitably befall the crown, constitutional, political, or personal. If King Charles should ever face a severe national emergency, will he seem like a calming presence or a man undone by the weight of expectation? 2. He's not the best of fathers. Royal watchers have paid close attention to Prince Charles's parenting style for a long time, especially considering the star power of his two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. Outwardly, his role as a father seems to have been overshadowed by the global admiration showered upon his late ex-wife, Princess Diana, who was widely perceived as warm, hands-on, and emotionally available to her children. By contrast, Charles has been portrayed as sometimes remote, other times too rigid. Prince Harry, in recent years, has publicly alleged that Charles cut him off financially, at one point stopped taking his calls, and demonstrated a parenting approach that felt lacking in compassion. Long before this open rift, stories circulated about smaller incidents. Once, a very young Prince William cried on a brutally cold day because he didn't have gloves. According to a biographer's account, Charles basically told him, "Well, I told you to bring gloves, it's your own fault." Another episode saw a young Prince William needing surgery after being struck by a golf club at school. Diana was by his bedside, but Charles still opted to attend a social function. Such anecdotes, repeated in tabloids and whispered at dinner parties, reflect poorly on someone who might want to be known as the father of the nation. If he doesn't exude fatherly warmth in his own household, the question becomes, how warmly will he shepherd the entire country? 3. The only opinions that matter are his own. Though Charles is often characterized as gentle, that doesn't necessarily mean he's open to hearing dissent. The man who might someday be king is also reputed to be quite stubborn. Various commentators, including reporters in The New Yorker, say Prince Charles can be unyielding when he's set his mind on something. If he believes in a cause, organic farming, architecture, or environmental issues, he can be single-minded to the point of disregarding professional advice that doesn't suit his worldview. Given that monarchy is a system where the sovereign receives counsel from many quarters, prime ministers, senior courtiers, and countless experts, some worry Charles might undermine that structure if he treats their advice as noise he can dismiss at will. While Queen Elizabeth II famously adopted a stance of stoic neutrality, taking counsel from her advisors, and rarely interjecting personal opinions into politics, Charles is more known for letter-writing campaigns, personal lobbying efforts, and unwavering stands on pet issues. This might not bother those who share his passions, but it certainly ruffles the feathers of those who believe the monarchy should remain an impartial institution. 4. People favor Prince William and Duchess Kate. Whenever the conversation about who should next take the throne surfaces, an overwhelming portion of the public professes a preference for Prince William, viewed as more modern, more in tune with the public, and less encumbered by controversies. William's marriage to Catherine Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, further cements that favorable view. Kate has become an icon, beloved for her understated elegance, warmth in public engagements, and the fairy tale aspect of having married into royalty from a relatively non-aristocratic background. This couple projects a wholesome, family-oriented aura reminiscent of the best parts of monarchy: tradition, continuity, public service. Many Brits see William as the natural progression, a generational shift that would keep the royal family relevant in the 21st century. Plus, William seems to have learned a thing or two from his mother's empathetic approach, which resonates with citizens expecting the monarchy to embrace philanthropic pursuits and public engagement. In many polls, given a hypothetical choice between King Charles and King William, the younger prince consistently garners more public approval. 5. The public is not over how he treated Princess Diana. An elephant looms in every room where Charles's reputation is discussed: Diana. For many, Princess Diana became a mythic figure, the people's princess, a woman who radiated compassion, kindness, and relatability. Her tragic death in 1997 froze her image in a halo of youthful, charitable energy. And a significant share of the public still harbors resentment toward Charles for his admitted affair with Camilla Parker Bowles during his marriage to Diana. Even decades later, the idea that Charles hurt an icon like Diana is a deep moral stain in the eyes of many Brits. They recall how Diana struggled openly with bulimia, self-esteem issues, and anxiety, attributing much of it to her unhappy marriage. Charles's own friends or staff might say the story was more complicated, but to the broader populace, the affair represented a betrayal of the monarchy's moral code. On top of that, Diana was so beloved that forgiveness seemed off the table for many, especially when interview clips surfaced of Charles's less than affectionate remarks about his bride. The intense memories of her funeral and the widespread grief that day ensure that the British public's reverence for Diana continues to overshadow any attempts Charles makes to repair his own image. 6. People believe Prince Charles to be petulant. It's not just sensitivity or romantic failings that dog Charles, it's also stories of his alleged petulance. Tom Bower's book Rebel Prince delves into such claims. Tales of tantrums, private rants, and an inflated sense of entitlement pepper accounts of Charles's day-to-day life. If these accounts are to be believed, Charles can lash out when circumstances don't align with his expectations or desires. Whether or not every story is accurate, the cumulative picture is that he's prone to spats and moods. For a monarchy already wrestling with relevancy in a world that emphasizes accountability and composure, these episodes can strike the public as unappealing, if not downright shocking. When your role is to symbolize national unity, public petty outbursts can feel alarmingly out of place. 7. His own father didn't believe in him. If you want a window into Prince Charles's early life, consider the viewpoint of his late father, Prince Philip, a self-made figure in many respects, having endured exile from Greece as a child, then toughened up by the rigors of British boarding schools and wartime naval service. Prince Philip valued resilience, stoicism, and physical prowess. He reportedly found Charles too soft, too cerebral, too timid. The father-son relationship was never described as especially warm or supportive. Instead, it was at times marked by frustration and mutual misunderstanding. Imagine your father doubting your suitability for the family business, except that the business is the monarchy, and the entire nation is watching. This paternal skepticism still fuels public concerns. If Prince Philip himself wasn't convinced of Charles's grit, some in the public ask, why should we be? 8. The Queen once thought he was a slow developer. It wasn't just Philip who had reservations about Charles's personality or pace of maturing. Queen Elizabeth II, especially in her early reign, had enormous duties that often overshadowed personal family life. Some accounts suggest she found her son to be a slow developer, leading her to be more emotionally distant than contemporary mother figures might be. Of course, cultural norms were also different back then, with the monarchy upholding a stiff upper lip tradition and nanny caretakers typically handling the day-to-day child rearing. Nonetheless, knowing that even his mother viewed him as, at times, underwhelming, has shaped how the public sees Charles as an adult. This collective sense that he never quite lived up to the archetype of a robust, commanding heir persists, even if his mother eventually came to respect his efforts in charity or environmental advocacy. 9. His own father sent him far away to make him a stronger member of the royal family. Prince Philip decided that the best place to sharpen Charles's resolve was Gordonstoun, a boarding school in Scotland known for its tough, Spartan-like ethos. The logic was, submerge the sensitive child in a demanding environment to fortify him against the challenges that come with royal life. Gordonstoun's emphasis on physical endurance and strict routine stood in stark contrast to Charles's more introspective nature. This period ended up being challenging, even traumatic for Charles. He was bullied, disliked the austere conditions, and pined for a gentler educational setting. Decades later, we see how this upbringing might have influenced the man he is. Guarded, occasionally prickly, possibly overcompensating for an early environment he found unsympathetic. While some might applaud his father for attempting to toughen him up, others see it as a mismatch that stunted Charles's sense of self, creating emotional baggage that lingers today. He had a tough childhood. Expanding on the idea of Gordon Stoon, Charles's early years were peppered with social awkwardness and feelings of being an outsider. Among his classmates, rumors say he was teased for his ears, for being different, for being the future king. This bullying and isolation shaped his worldview. People who want a king with a commanding presence might look at these stories and wonder if that painful upbringing left Charles still craving acceptance, perhaps too eager to assert himself in ways that come off as arrogant or whiny. At home, too, the environment was less than supportive. Prince Philip's alpha male style and Princess Anne's resilience overshadowed Charles. He often appeared lonely, unsteady, and overshadowed by louder personalities. Critics say a future monarch needs thick skin from day one, and while adversity can indeed forge strong leaders, many question whether the bullying Charles endured turned him into a man always on the defensive. 11th, Prince Charles is claimed to be spoiled. Being the eldest child of a reigning monarch ensures you never lack for staff or comfort, but the scale of Charles's alleged pampering is legendary. Tales abound of pressed pajamas and ironed shoelaces, a level of fussiness that would make 18th century courtiers blush. Some staffers have dubbed him the pampered prince, describing a routine in which every detail of his day is curated. Bath temperature, the precise angle of the bath plug, the arrangement of toiletries, these are not mere side anecdotes, but consistent threads in the tapestry of Charles's public image. Detractors say this underscores his lack of independence, a grown man still relying on an army of attendants for trivial tasks. In a modern Britain that applauds humility and a can-do spirit, hearing that Charles might shriek at the sight of cling film seems terribly out of touch. Yes, royals have a tradition of living a bit above the ordinary constraints of daily life, but the British public generally cherishes stoic, down-to-earth members of the royal family. Think of the Queen driving her own Range Rover, or Prince William sometimes traveling on budget airlines. By comparison, Charles's luxurious tastes can feel stiflingly archaic. 12th, he spends life in too much comfort connected to the notion that he's spoiled is the criticism that Charles is far too comfortable. He travels with a massive entourage, even for short trips, bringing valets, secretaries, and personal chefs. Rumors say he lugs along his own bedroom furniture and a personal toilet seat on foreign visits. Each detail of travel, from the type of jet to the choice of train, is said to revolve around Charles's preferences. The cost incurred by these journeys naturally falls under scrutiny, particularly when Britons pay taxes that underwrite many royal expenses. In a time when the monarchy is under pressure to show cost-effectiveness and humility, Charles's rumored extravagance can rankle. Environmentalists who admire his championing of green issues also recoil at the contradictions. He may advocate for carbon emissions reduction, but then insists on private flights or special trains for trivial distances. Whether these stories are overblown or not, they've colored the public perception of a man whose life, from cradle to near crown, has been steeped in unimaginable privilege. 13. People think that Prince Charles is a snob. Prince Charles has tried to cultivate a brand around preserving heritage, appreciating classical architecture, and upholding old British traditions, but critics say this can bleed into snobbery. He's famously described certain modern architectural trends as monstrous carbuncles, leading some to see him as out of touch with contemporary creative movements. Reports of him sidestepping normal social interactions or speaking in a manner that feels aloof only bolster the image that he's quite distant from everyday Britons. While monarchy has always thrived on a measure of mystique, nobody expects a king to be exactly like the average person in the street. Charles's perceived haughtiness can come across as tone-deaf in an era that prizes accessibility. Diana was revered partly because she bridged the gap, hugging AIDS patients, walking through fields of landmines, engaging with the vulnerable. William and Kate's approach echoes that inclusive spirit. Charles, many argue, sometimes stumbles in forging that genuine sense of connection. 14. Prince Charles has shown a disregard for animal welfare. Among the younger generations, animal rights and environmental consciousness are not fringe concerns, but mainstream values. Prince Charles has garnered praise for his environmental activism, especially around sustainability and climate change. Yet he undermines that positive record in some people's eyes by endorsing or praising traditions like fox hunting, which he once famously called romantic. This stance is anathema to animal welfare advocates who see fox hunting as cruel and archaic. It doesn't help that in the shifting public perspective, Prince Harry has refused to attend certain hunts, demonstrating a willingness to adapt, while Charles's defenders say he's merely upholding centuries-old customs. Critics retort that monarchy has always adapted to social evolution. Slavery was abolished, women were allowed ascension lines, etc. So why cling to fox hunting, an emblem of aristocratic leisure that many see as needlessly brutal? 15. His good works don't make headlines if Charles were a tabula rasa, no controversies, no bad optics. His philanthropic efforts might shine more brilliantly. Indeed, he's been an environmental advocate since long before it was fashionable. He's championed organic farming, cultural preservation, and dozens of charities through the Prince's Trust. This trust, founded in the mid-1970s, has aided countless underprivileged youths, an achievement that, in theory, should elevate him in the public's esteem. Yet mainstream British media often spotlights his pampered prince stories over his good works. And sometimes Charles himself overshadowed his achievements with personal missteps. The tabloids run with more eye-catching narratives. His exasperation at a pen leaking ink, his complaining about press intrusions, or the ongoing saga of his familial drama. While he deserves credit for championing environmentalism, the overshadowing negativity or cynicism about his personal life often relegates these good deeds to a footnote. 16. Prince Charles sees the monarchy in a different way. Charles once hinted to Vanity Fair that his vision of a constitutional monarch differs from how his mother or grandfather approached it. The monarchy is centuries old, with a tapestry of precedent, tradition, and an unspoken code of how the sovereign should behave. Neutral, almost invisible in politics, and well above the fray of daily squabbles. Charles, however, has historically been outspoken, writing letters, the so-called Black Spider memos, to government ministers, lobbying for issues he cares about, and letting his personal viewpoints be known. For some Brits, that seems refreshing. Why not have a king who speaks up on matters like climate change or architectural preservation? But for others, it's downright alarming. They see the role of monarch as purely ceremonial and fear that Charles's willingness to flex royal influence could blur lines between democracy and inherited authority. Because he's not an elected official, many believe he shouldn't meddle in policy or governance, lest monarchy appear dangerously anachronistic in a modern democracy. 17. People see Prince Charles as disloyal. The monarchy thrives on loyalty, loyalty to the nation, loyalty to tradition, loyalty within the family. But Charles's life story, peppered with romantic entanglements and regrets, has left many feeling that his notion of loyalty wavers. He was expected to follow the royal family's preference by marrying a certain kind of aristocratic bride, but his heart evidently belonged to Camilla Parker Bowles. He yielded to family and national pressure, wedding the much younger Diana Spencer. The rest was, famously, a tragedy, an extramarital affair with Camilla, a humiliating separation, and a divorce that rocked the crown. What remains is a lingering sense that Charles can betray even those closest to him if it suits his desires. That impression, fairly or not, extends into the realm of monarchy itself. Critics question whether he might disregard accepted conventions if they inconvenience him. The crown rests in part on trust, and disloyalty is a severe accusation, one that's tough to dispel once lodged in the public imagination. 18. A longer reign offers a reassuring consistency. Queen Elizabeth II's reign became an anchor in times of turbulence. Over 70 years on the throne, she was the one constant as Britain transformed from a post-war empire to a modern, multicultural society. Charles, now in his 70s, can't replicate that. Even if he ascends the throne tomorrow, the realistic expectation is that his reign will be comparatively short. That concerns many Brits who find comfort in the continuity a long-reigning monarch provides. Why invest emotionally in a king who might only serve a couple of decades at best? This sense of imminent transition might be part of why people are so eager to see William take over. He represents not just the next monarch, but a potential for another half-century of stable leadership. This isn't necessarily Charles's fault. Age is indiscriminate, but it does complicate how the public envisions the future. 19. Many don't want to see Camilla as queen. Another thorny issue is Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall. Technically, when Charles ascends the throne, Camilla's official title would be Queen Consort, and indeed the Queen made it clear that was her wish before her passing. However, for decades, polls showed a lukewarm acceptance at best for Queen Camilla. Many can't forget that she was once the other woman in the Diana-Charles saga. Even though Camilla's been quietly dedicated to charity and public service in the intervening years, forging a respectable image for herself, some of the public remains uneasy. To be fair, time has softened the hostility. Camilla is no longer the tabloid villain she once was, but residual feelings linger, and the notion that she'll stand as queen by Charles's side stirs memories of Diana's heartbreak in those who adored the late princess. This emotional resistance to Camilla can bleed into resistance to Charles, making the two inseparable in the public mind. 20. Royalty is his most significant burden. Finally, the greatest irony. Prince Charles's entire life has revolved around the destiny he didn't choose. Royal watchers have long speculated that Charles might feel relieved rather than exalted if he never became king. One could argue that he yearns to indulge his passions, gardening, painting watercolors, championing local crafts, free from the constraints of being the sovereign. The monarchy has been both his birthright and, some say, his most punishing cross to bear. Ever since he was 3, he's been on the path to kingship. Just imagine the pressure, every waking hour shaped by a responsibility that can never be cast aside. If the monarchy is an institution yearning for a leader with unwavering zeal, some suspect Charles lacks that fervor. Perhaps in a life where choices were seldom truly his, the final privilege of wearing the crown may feel more like a gilded prison. And if the prospective king himself appears half-hearted, it's no wonder the public hesitates. Thus ends our exploration into the 20 reasons some of the British public have reservations, big and small, personal and political, about Prince Charles becoming king. As you've seen, this narrative isn't simply about one flawed man, but about centuries of tradition, the swirling demands of modern society, and a family whose internal dramas have, for better or worse, been played out in the global spotlight. We've navigated emotional terrain, from Charles's tense childhood and paternal doubts to lingering heartbreak from the Diana years, to the overshadowing presence of William and Kate, favored by many as the fresh face of monarchy. Mixed into that swirl is Charles's own desire, some might call it longing, to shape the monarchy into something new. Whether that transformation is a necessary modernization or a step too far remains unclear. So, what do you think? Should Prince Charles finally fulfill his birthright? Or would Britain be better served by a generational leap to William? Are these concerns about Charles fixable? Or are they too deeply ingrained in the very fabric of who he is? Let your voice be heard in the comments. Would you stand behind King Charles? Or would you prefer the monarchy chart a different path? If you found this long journey through royal complexities engaging, please show your support. Hit that like button, share your own perspective below, or consider subscribing so you never miss our future explorations of history, culture, and the fascinating figures who shape our world. And of course, feel free to share this video with friends, family, or fellow royal watchers. Let's keep the conversation alive because the story of the crown is far from over. After all, monarchy doesn't just belong to the history books. It's woven into the living tapestry of a nation. And Prince Charles's next chapter, should it come, may redefine this ancient institution for a new generation. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.